if he can take a lovable old guy like Harry DeCamp and make of him a father confessor. It's beautiful. That story, that letter touched me to the heart. He's just out loving people because something great happened to him. He decided to go with it. Now, you know, you can't tell what could happen to you if you would make the decision to go for God, really go for Him, and to take Jesus Christ and live with Him. Your life could be altogether different. Once, years ago, there was a man who used to sit in the fifth row from the front down here with his wife. He was a tough guy if I ever met one. He was an alcoholic. You name any sin, and he had committed it. He was, by his own admission, a roughneck. But he had a beautiful wife. And she wanted to come to church. So he came along with her. And after a while, the church began to get to him. But he drank himself into a stupor. He wasn't faithful to his wife either. I knew it. He told me. She knew it. He didn't tell her, but she knew it. But one Sunday, sitting in church, she told me later, I looked at my husband and I saw tears running down his cheeks. I'd never in my life seen him cry before. And I was worried to death. Something was happening to him. And I nudged him. What's wrong? And he brushed me off. But the tears continued to roll down. After the service was over, we had our car parked on 28th Street. He said, let's walk. We walked up Fifth Avenue for block after block. Still the tears streaming down his cheeks. He wouldn't say a word. And I just tagged along after him. Finally, he stopped and he says, honey, something wonderful happened to me in church this morning. I was sitting there when all of a sudden, everything just seemed to break up inside of me. And I felt so happy. I'm not crying because I'm unhappy, but because I'm happy. I'm a different man. I'll never be the way I've been anymore. And she said, standing there on the street, he put his arms around her and hugged her up close and patted her head and kissed her. And he says, I love you. She said, what happened to you? He said, it was the Holy Spirit. Why, she said, what do you know about the Holy Spirit? He said, I don't know, only I felt it. That man's name was Dick. His wife was named Fran. They're both gone now. But from that day until the day he died, he had it. This inexpressible thing called happiness. He made a decision right here. Now, maybe it wouldn't be so dramatic for you, but you make that decision, and I'll guarantee to you, you'll be happy. For always. The late Fulton Oursler was one of the great writers of his day and generation. He was, for a long time, senior editor of the Reader's Digest. He was a dedicated layman of the Roman Catholic Church. He was a great friend of mine, and I revere his memory. He used to come down here to church now and then. He was an interesting man, Fulton was. rather innovative and imaginative, sensitive to feeling and atmosphere. And once after a service, he came storming back into my study and he says, "There's magic in this place." I said, "What kind of magic, Fulton? This is not a magician's place." "Oh, but," he said, "there's the magic of the gospel here." And then he said, "As I sat out there this morning in that congregation, I said to myself, this place is packed absolutely full of love and faith." And that's what it is. The genius of a Church of Jesus Christ isn't what the preacher says. It's what the congregation is. And this is a congregation of excitement, faith, love, and a belief in something very great. And that something very great is something that can happen right here now. Perhaps the best definition of a church service I ever remember hearing was compounded by a lady by the name of Mary Brennig, who I'm sure is known to many of you, formerly very active here in the church until she moved up to New Hampshire. She said, "A church service is the creation of a spiritual atmosphere in which a miracle of life change may take place." That's right. A church service is the creation of an atmosphere of a spiritual nature in which a miracle of life change can take place. For example, the man who came in here one Sunday determined that before nightfall had come, he would, as he put it, blow his brains out. So he told me later. But he made a very great mistake if he expected to carry out that ill-conceived objective. "For," said he, "I came into Marble Collegiate Church. I looked at the people all around me. I saw that they were alight and alive. They were vibrant. They seemed to have a feeling that life was good. And all of a sudden that transmitted itself to me. And by that magic atmosphere, I was changed." Now, you know, friends, people have the strangest notions of Christianity, if they have any notion at all. I meet people who haven't the slightest idea what Christianity is all about. They think it's some kind of a dull, stilted, stupid, dopey kind of a thing. I think that Christianity is a science. And I believe that the church is a laboratory in which that science is demonstrated. The greatest thinker who ever lived was a man that they called Jesus Christ. And he was a scientist because he laid out formulas that will work when they are worked under appropriate circumstances all the time. Any science is a system of thought built up upon demonstrated formula. So Christianity may be a theology, it may be a philosophy, it may be a system of worship, but it's also a workable science. Now, for example, Jesus says, "Love one another." Now, that sounds like some sweetness and light kind of thing, but that's the smartest thing that was ever said. Because he says the only way to live in this world successfully is to love. Because if you hate, then you set up resistance and you cause